Hello and welcome to the Swedish Linux. Linux, the right way. Today we are going to talk about why Linux is the best desktop operating system in the world. And why everybody could switch to Linux. And we're going to talk about several key points here. For example, the resource management in Linux and how Linux looks today. And is Linux good enough for using as a daily driver? This and much more we're going to talk about right after this. Welcome back to the Swedish Linux. Linux, the right way. Okay, my dear friends, let's talk about Linux and its useness of resources. Here you can see that I have the system monitor open and only use 4.6 gig. And I have several applications, as you can see, running and over here. And that is less than Windows 10 on the same machine. So what kind of machine do I have? This is a Ryzen 9 third generation 3950X with 64 GB of RAM, 1 terabyte M2, and a second 2 terabyte M2, and a couple of SSD disks, and NVIDIA 1080. And on this computer, when I boot fresh Windows installation, of course all the drivers and everything is hooked up, it uses between 4 and 5 gigs of RAM. The same in Linux, which is Manjaro I have on this computer, which is my favorite distribution, Manjaro, use less than 900 megabytes. Yes, you heard me correct, 900 megabytes. That's less than 1 gigabyte of RAM. What does it mean for the average Joe if he use Linux? Yeah, well, first of all, he doesn't need to buy a computer that often because the hardware you have will last much longer because Linux is not resource hungry as Windows or Mac OS X on Macs. You can use Linux for a very long time on your hardware. Of course, if the hardware breaks and you can't repair it or replace it, then of course maybe it's time to buy a new machine. That's why I never have a laptop. I have always a desktop, so I can replace the part and continue. And that's one of the reasons why I use Linux, because it's giving the computer much longer lifespan of using. My last computer was an Intel 3770K, which I have for almost 9 years before it broke. The motherboard died. And I bought this AMD last year. So this is one of the many reasons why I choose Linux. It's much more effective with the resources and it makes my computer last a lot longer. And I'm using the most powerful software like GIMP. I'm using OBS to record this. I'm using KDN Live to edit my videos, and a lot of other softwares I'm using. But the main point is how effective Linux use the resources your computer have. For example, my baby girl, she has a laptop that's 10 years old with 4 gig of RAM and a SSD, and it runs Linux, a lightweight Linux, and she can do everything she needs. Writing, surfing the web, watch YouTube or whatever she wants to do. The only thing she can't do is play games, but that she doesn't like anyway. So that computer in the Windows world or Mac world would be long gone on the thrown to the trash and recycled. But thanks to Linux, it still is usable. And here you can see my system monitor. You can see how little it used. Only 5% of the disk. I'm recording this live. It's only 1%, 2% of the CPU, and 4.5 gig of RAM. And everybody who says that, Linux, you need to know terminal and all that to scare you off, that's Windows propaganda. This is a terminal. And you don't need it to use Linux. Everybody who tells you that you can't use Linux without a terminal is basically lying you straight up in your face. You don't need terminal. Yes, it's much more convenient using the terminal, I must say. And myself, I love the terminal. But you don't need terminal at all. You can do everything through the graphical interface. So if anybody tells you the only way you can use Linux is through terminal, sorry, they're lying. And let's see. This is what's called the Office Suite, LibreOffice. This is the right. As you can see, it's very similar to Microsoft Word, and you can do all the things, almost all the things in Microsoft Word you can do here. And most people, most government and most companies in the world would be more than fine using LibreOffice. And you can save a lot of money on different licenses by using LibreOffice. And it works perfectly fine. There's absolutely nothing you can do with LibreOffice that is of any great value and that only Microsoft Word has it, that you can't use LibreOffice. No, most people in the world, companies and governments, can use it without any problem whatsoever. And of course, my favorite Linux, like I said before, is Manjaro. I like the rolling release version, I like to be up to date, and I like to be at the edge of technology. And of course, I use KDE Plasma on Manjaro. When I installed Manjaro first time without any other software, it only took 690 megabytes of RAM to boot up. 695 megabytes. My iPhone 12 uses more RAM than my desktop operating system, Manjaro Plasma. But not everybody wants KDE. Then you have GNOME, which is more like Mac OS, I would say. But the system I would recommend for everybody is Linux Mint. because that's really, really good operating system. I myself, I started with Ubuntu once in a time, and very short after Ubuntu, I switched over to Mint. But I become more nerd or geeky, and I went deeper, and I thought that it's not enough, and I went over to Manjaro, of course through Fedora. But Linux Mint is definitely something I can recommend for everybody. There is no, I mean, as you see, it looks like Windows. Yes, different colors, different, but you basically have this toolbar down here, and then you have your apps and the same function as Windows has, and you can use it. And I'm pretty sure that most people who are not completely computer illiterate can use Linux Mint. If you can use Windows, you can definitely use Linux Mint. There's no way you can use Windows and you can't use Linux Mint. That's completely impossible. And as you see, Linux is nowadays graphical. You don't need to use any terminal. You don't need it. And that's the beauty. That's the beauty with Linux. You can use the terminal if you like, but you can as well use the graphical interface. And nobody will tell you that you can't use it. So Linux works very, very, very good. And I mean, here in the, you can call it program shop or app store, as it's called on macOS, you have all the apps you need. Photo management and editing, the same as Adobe Lightroom. Very good email client I use myself, Evolution. Ebook writer to setups, printer, HTOP, you can see resources. Inkscape is a little bit like InDesign, Adobe InDesign. Video editing, very good. If you want to learn how to type on your keyboard fast, LibreOffice, book writing or manuscript writing, very good. Video player, I use it myself. OBS Studio is what I use now. And as you can see, there is everything. Telegram if you need it. Very good PDF reader. I love it. Minimalistic, but perfect. And you can search through anything you like. There's nothing you can't search. For example, photo video, and you get a lot of video, photo scanners, and whatever you need. Music, players, and everything. There is tons and tons of software you can use. Communication, games, utilities, you have it all. And that's what I like about it. But you really don't need the Windows platform. You have everything you need in Linux. Let's see. And anybody who tells you that you really need graphical interface to use it, I will tell it again. No, look, everything you want to do, you can do it graphically. There isn't anything you need to use Linux in any way, shape, or form. You can use it very well, and you have everything here. So you don't need the graphical interface at all if you really hate the terminal. But my recommendation is try to learn it, and you will see the benefits of the terminal. But as I tell you, you don't need a terminal at all. And this settings, file management, is more or less the same on all Linux. It could be different a little bit in sizes and colors and that kind of things and functions, but pretty much 9 of 10 it is identical and you can use it the same way. I definitely recommend to use Mint, Manjaro, and if you really like the big dog in the room is, for example, Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a very good desktop operating system. It's Linux as well. It's the biggest one of them all. For example, Linux Mint is based on Ubuntu, but they add their own flavor and functions to it. And as you can see, Ubuntu exists in many different forms. Ubuntu is a KDE Plasma, Lubuntu, Bungie, Studio, Mate, Kylin, and Xubuntu, yeah, and so on. So you really don't need to worry about anything using Linux. And what is the benefit of using Linux? Well, first of all, you don't have viruses and Trojan horses and like that, simply because you're 1 to 2% of the desktop market. That's only a small part of the truth. The second part is that Linux is built from ground up for security. So even if Linux would have 80-90% of the market, look, Linux has more than 95% of the server market in the world. It's not often you hear that a server crashed because of virus. No. Hacks, yes. But that's completely different. They can hack any system in this world. And remember, there is no perfect system. There is no 100% secure system. But Linux is definitely one of the best systems when it comes to security. And trust me, if Linux wouldn't be this good and stable and security, it wouldn't have more than 95% or 98% of the market on the server, which stock market, hospitals, governments, even Microsoft themselves and Apple runs on Linux servers. Google runs on Linux servers because Linux is this stable system. The stable system. There isn't any better. If you maintain your Linux very good, you will have a very stable system. And of course, you don't need to upgrade. You can put one version on it and keep it as long as the hardware works. Another thing I like about Linux is update. I can do it in the terminal or I'll just do here. One click, if I would have an update, it will come right here, and I click apply, and it's gone. It's done. And I don't need to reboot my system to do the update. In Windows, you know what I'm talking about. Windows reboots almost on every update you get. You need to reboot. Everybody knows this. Restart. Everybody knows that. And this, getting Windows ready. Don't turn off your computer. Why do I need to waste my time on this? Yes, it's a minute, two every day, but let's say two couple of minutes every day for an entire life. How many days, weeks will it be? Or Windows blue screen of death. Of this. Really, I don't have time for this. The computer is a tool for me to be creative, to reach some point of work somewhere. It's not a tool that I need to keep in tip-top shape just to make it run. I keep it because I want a stable system that runs and let me do my work. I'm dependent on my computer, not the way around. I need to know that my computer boots up and works. For example, I had Windows on a partition, and suddenly Windows decide that there isn't no TMP, and I couldn't boot into Windows anymore. Okay, I didn't have any important there, so I just blew the drive and I said, thank you, goodbye. I'm going to have Windows in a virtual machine. And this is a little bit why I'm tired. I'm tired of Windows problems. Really. I don't want to waste my time on updates, reboots, and all that crap that Windows doing. I know Windows works. I know there are a million of people around the world who depend on Windows, and it's fine. I'm not telling that is wrong. But I'm telling there is something much, much better. And this Windows update fails. I mean, I've seen so many friends who have problems with their Windows machine. So, and everybody remembers probably when Windows update and breaks your document folder, you can't reach a document or whatever it is, or completely breaks your system that you need to reinstall the entire system from scratch. No, thank you. I don't need that. Especially when there is a system out there, like Linux, who takes all that away from me. All that worries and waste of time on rebooting and waiting on updates and all that crap away, and give me that time to me. That's why I love Linux. It gives me the real freedom. I'm not a slave to the computer. The computer works for me, and the computer is a tool for me to reach my goal, whatever it is I'm doing with my computer. It's not the way around that I need to serve the computer just to be sure that the computer will work. No. Computer works for me. So if you value your free time, use Linux. So guys, this is a little bit why I believe that Linux is the best operating system in the world. And Linux will grow slowly and steady because we have companies like Dell, Lenovo, HP, System 76 who are pushing more and more Linux machines out there. And as soon as Linux computers gets to the Best Buy shelves and Walmart and all that, Linux will take off. And thanks to the gaming with the Proton and Steam, Linux getting more and more traction. And look now on Windows 11, limiting hardware. Why Windows? And you're still building it on Windows 10 core. You just give a new paint on the system. This basically, you paint a pig, but it's still a pig. It won't be something else just because you give a new GUI interface. It's still a pig down there, and you still have the big chunky NT core and all that crap. Microsoft should build Windows as a Linux distribution on a Linux core. Then yes, it will work, but no, it's not. But in time, Linux will come. And Linux really gives you the freedom that you want. You won't waste time on keeping the machine in good condition just so you can be sure it boots. Linux is as safe as it comes. If you don't do any stupid with your system will work as long as the hardware works. And remember, when something breaks, it's not usually the computer breaks, it's usually the end user, except for Windows, because Windows breaks all the time without any reasons. But on Linux, if something goes wrong, 99.9% sure if the end user did something. But on Windows, it's reverse. It's 99% sure Windows will do something sketchy and in the end break it. But this is all I want to talk about today, why I love Linux, why I'm going to use Linux, because I can do everything on it. And I'm doing professional photo shooting and editing on my machine. And I'm going to continue doing it because it's that stable. And when I'm done, it just works. And it gives me the freedom of time. If you like the video, please like and subscribe and get into my Patreon and support us or support me and this channel. It's really appreciated if you can do that. Otherwise, see you to the next chapter. Peace.